can play that game where everybody puts their phone in the middle of the table, first person to pick it up pays the bill, that kind of, So even though that sounds a little cheesy, it forces everyone to look each other in the eye, talk to each other, maybe learn something about the other person.
Hey, welcome back to Coffee with Bearded Bad Dad. Today, my guest is Dr. Carla Caturia. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome. So, I wanted to talk to you about what's wrong with today's youth, because what is wrong with today's youth, right? But before we get into that, introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about your background, and we'll get into your program and everything.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, so I work with teens and families. I'm a mindset coach, peak performance coach, mental performance coach, whatever you want to call it. But it's all about helping teens to rewire their brain and to help them live a more powerful life. I work with the whole family. It's a lot of parent and teen like reconnection and more harmony in their relationship as well. So it's about the teen, but it's about the family. And truly, I work with tweens, young adults, just anybody that's willing to be open to working on themselves and learning to thrive, live in their purpose, and just be better than they were yesterday.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I have a saying. I have a saying that like I try to wake up every day and be a better man, a better father, and a better husband than I was the day before. So that's very interesting that you say that.
Yep, that's
So
all we can ask for, right?
absolutely. I normally don't really talk to a whole lot of coaches, but tell us a little bit about your background before you were a coach. I
Mhm.
understand that you were a principal at one time.
Yeah, so I was a teacher, assistant principal, and a college professor for about 2 decades. Yeah, at the middle
Wow.
school, high school, and college, of course, levels. So all the levels. And yeah, it's funny you said you don't talk to coaches because I was very resistant to becoming a coach because there's a lot of like everybody out there wants to be a coach. I live in Miami, so this kind of coach, that kind of coach. And I'm like, but you're 20 years old. What are you coaching people on? Right. So then I said, well, so I was like, okay, well, what else am I going to call it? Right. Because that's really what I'm doing. Yet, I like to go deep with kids and families and really get to the root cause of their emotional pressure. So it really isn't therapy. It is coaching and it's really, stepping into their next identity and supporting them through that. So yeah, so I mentored kids forever. It wasn't called coaching. It was like called mentoring. And then I realized I'm like, oh, I'm actually doing coaching, but it's disguised as something else, right? So it's funny you say that because I had a lot of resistance to that. And then, yeah, I left education and now I'm running my business full time and just helping families at a deeper level, something I didn't feel I could do in academia. Yeah,
Well,
so
I mean,
thanks for
I'll tell
having
you,
me.
you're very welcome. I'll tell you, the reason why I don't talk to a whole lot of coaches is because it feels so inauthentic to me.
Mm,
And the reason why I'm willing to I'm willing, I'm open to have a conversation with just about anybody, to be
sure.
honest with you. But I find it just so inauthentic sometimes. But you have credentials and experience to back up your coaching experience, your coaching business or
Mhm.
your platform. And so for me, that inauthenticity comes from or the feeling that it's inauthentic comes from because my whole life I've been introduced to a lot of coaches that really don't know what the hell they're doing.
Mm,
And
mm.
they tell, oh, I'm a financial coach, but they file bankruptcy 12 times. Or, I'm a wellness coach, but they're fat, and it's one of those things where like I don't like to be rude to people, but I also I don't like to feel like I'm being sold on something. And I didn't feel that from you because I actually understand the need for, I guess, a teen coach or a child coach that helps parents and children and teens to get through to that next level of life. And
Hmm.
that's essentially what I wanted to talk to you about today is what is wrong with today's youth. I know there's a lot of anxiety. You could tie it into school academic performance anxiety. But I think that there's just a whole lot of expectations on
Hmm.
children, but those children don't know in a clear way what those expectations are.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of anxiety, stress, overwhelm. One, to have the GPA, the grades, the activities, you fill in the blank, to have the life that everybody wants on Instagram or TikTok, or there's this that social media pressure. I work with so many boys and they're like, "Oh my God, what do you want to do? Oh, I want to get a Lamborghini or Ferrari, live in Miami, and and like retire my parents." And I'm like, that's so when I was growing up, it was you wanted to be like an athlete. I'm going to be a basketball player, a football player. Now it's I want to be an influencer. So there's that piece that's just what they grew up knowing. There's a lot of who am I, like identity questions. There's a lot of parents unintentionally putting pressure on their kids because they're carrying their own stories and their own trauma and it's coming
Yes.
out on their kids. And it's interesting because it's very different today than it was when you and I or other people grew up, yet it's all the same core issues. Am I enough? Do people like me? Can I go out with this guy or girl? It's packaged differently, and I think a lot of parents are kind of like trying to make up for what they didn't have. So giving, let's go to Starbucks every day. Let's go to, here's your credit card. Take Apple Pay. Like they're giving them everything, which is fantastic. Yet their teens aren't able to build any autonomy because when you just have a phone that buys you things, it's like,
It's like we've given them all the
uh,
tools. It's like we've given them all the tools, we don't teach them how to use them.
right. And then, their financial literacy is mandatory in at least in Florida schools, but many schools. But financial literacy is also being taught by teachers that use the checkbook. So like, and that's not a problem, but it just barely exists anymore. So it's like, how do they learn the autonomy, the financial literacy, the relationship skills?
Yeah.
And many of our kids, not going to blame COVID, but many of our kids were online for a couple years and didn't see friends when in those developmental years.
Yes.
Um, so there's a lot going on there.
There is a lot going on there. For me, like I don't I don't know if COVID really affected all kids, but one generation in particular is the ages like when you're coming into high school,
Hmm.
or eighth grade, ninth grade, 10th grade. Those years are very formidable for social and social skills.
Hmm.
And today's teens they are so into their screens and their phones and social media and stuff. When they have face-to-face interactions, and I talk about this on the podcast all the time, when they have
Hmm.
face-to-face interactions, they can't talk. They can't
Hmm.
speak to one another. They can't and it's almost as if they have to have a screen between them to really talk, to let that identity out. And I really identity politics is one of those things that I can't stand. And I think that the over politicization, however you say that word, over
I understand what you're
politicizing
saying.
the
Yeah.
schools and academia, I think that is what has led to a lot of identity issues and kids not knowing who they are, where they come from. And I think social media and the attention span robbing nature of social media and stuff like that is really a root cause of all of these things, and it just exacerbates because like we don't know how to fix it. We've unleashed this powerful technology onto the world and we don't know how to fix it. And our best guess right now is to leave it in the hands of billionaires who really don't care about us. And so like my kids aren't allowed to have social media. So we don't have that issue here. What we
Hmm.
do have is like they are addicted. My kids are addicted to screens, and I don't really know how
Hmm.
to fix that because I'm addicted to my screen. I'm
Hmm.
addicted to my phone. I have my phone
Hmm.
with me all the time. I'm not on it, but
Hmm.
I do use it, and they see me, like they see me surfing on the internet, they see me surfing through social media and stuff like that, and that's not attention that's going to them. And so they see that, no, oh, I'm going to get into this TV show or I'm going to get into this video game. And then they don't come out for hours. And so, like, what, as a person who speaks with teens, works with teens and other family members, what is your suggestion to really kind of limit that access to social media or limit screens?
I think you just answered your own question. It's modeling. So I'm serious. I mean, obviously there's people like yourself have jobs, you're busy, you need to be answering, emails and responding to things throughout the day. Yet are you setting aside time with your family and prioritizing that? So is
Right.
there if you're going to tell your kid that 10 p.m. is no screens and bedtime or whatever time it is, you can't, you can, but if you just sit there on your phone all night, what are you teaching them? Or if goes out to dinner and then everyone's on their phone, why did you even go out to dinner? What was the point?
Right. Right.
But you can play that game where everybody puts their phone in the middle of the table, first person to pick it up pays the bill, that kind of. So even though that sounds a little cheesy, it forces everyone to look each other in the eye, talk to each other, maybe learn something about the other person. Just so I would challenge you as well as other dads and parents to put it down. So do you need to start time blocking? Do you really need to answer the email on your phone at 9 p.m. when you're in the middle of watching a movie with your kid? Can you leave the phone in the other room and just actually like sit with your kid and talk about something or watch the movie or go for a walk? So I think it just comes down to if it's important enough for you for them to be off the screen, it should be important enough for you. And that's not, it's also healthy for you. It's like we want to
Yes.
say we want to say that what's wrong with teens? Well, what's wrong with teens is because they've been watching us.
Yeah, exactly. I
Okay.
love that so much. I love that so much, and that's true. Modeling behaviors. So I've been a stay-at-home dad for like 12 years.
Nice.
And like, so other than the podcast and a few of my hobbies, I really don't have like things that really rob my attention. So I am present a lot.
Nice. Good.
I do put down my phone. I do interact with the kids. We go places, we do things. And
Mm-hmm.
what I think what's more important than that, like my kids don't have like traditional cell phones. My 6 year old or 16-year old has what they call a gab phone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because we had learned some really hard to learn lessons uh, um, about unfettered access to the internet with
Mm-hmm.
kids underage and having those tough conversations with kids. And we've decided that like we're just going to limit it all together and completely like treat them like it's not the old do as I say, not as I do model, but it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
close.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of close in that I explain to them like, look, you are not old enough to understand or fully understand the themes that are coming out of that phone. And so
Mm-hmm.
until you are, we're going to limit your access. And
Yep.
I don't find it difficult to do those things, but both my younger kids are tablet kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's and I'm a TV dad. I watch TV, I watch the news, I have my phone, I watch podcasts and stuff like that. So
Sure.
it's really hard to be like, oh, you can't do that, but I can. So modeling behavior is a really I think it's the best way to teach is modeling
Mm.
through behavior. Now we
Yeah.
touched on a little bit on um financial
Mm.
literacy. And I want to kind of
Mm-hmm.
touch into that and then we'll get into your program.
Yeah.
I live in Missouri, and
Mm-hmm.
Missouri is one of the least financially literate states. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I know I didn't graduate high school, I got my GED, I didn't go to college. So I feel kind of dumb when it comes to financial matters. But I've come to learn over time that I know a lot more than a lot of other people and I don't know much. And so it really bothers me that nobody understands really how money works. And I think that's by design. But
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I think that if financial literacy was taught here in schools a little bit more, we wouldn't have so many people on the edge of being like really destitute poor here in this
Hmm.
state if people really understood how money works. And I like
Mm.
lottery is a big thing here.
Mm.
And if you've ever played the lottery, you know, like the house always wins, you know, and it may be just $1 today, but that $1 today adds up over 20 years and you don't win a jackpot, but
Hmm.
you've spent all of that money on lottery. And that's financial literacy in a nutshell. Is everybody's got a product to
Yeah.
sell, you just don't have to buy it, you know.
Right,
um
right.
you talked about Florida schools, and financial literacy is big in the Florida schools. Uh do you think that's like one of the things that keeps Florida like on par, or uh, maybe even on a different level than the rest
Mm.
of the country that doesn't have financial, like we don't even teach our kids how to do taxes in school.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do think it's obviously an improvement from not having it for sure. Absolutely. I've spoken with people outside of the system, but they have whole companies that create curriculum around it, and it's all, computer based. And so if you have a homeschool kid, you can follow that. And so I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. And what I think even is more important than just financial literacy is discipline in general. So
Yes.
it's not that you don't have money. You might not have a lot of money, but you get a paycheck. Or,
Right.
but how much of that paycheck can you keep?
Right.
So if you're going out to dinner all the time and like you said, playing lotto, or whatever you're doing, if you're just spending your money on this stuff, that's discipline. So is saving money the answer? Well, that's the start, and then the next step is investing, and then the next step is teaching kids discipline with anything, but including money. And I think there's just the gap of, also, we get everything instantly. Like there's Amazon, there's Uber Eats, there's all this stuff. So being patient and having discipline are things that are not gone, they're not lost, but it's things we need to bring back, because if you're spending all your money and you're just in this cycle of this poverty cycle, pretty
Right.
much. And so it's not necessarily the goal needs to be becoming rich, but the goal is to have freedom, because wealth is not just money, it's freedom, it's time. So if you have enough and a bit of overflow, then you can go on the vacations and do the things, right? So I see that from kids that don't necessarily come from a lot of means. And then I see the flip side from many of my clients who have all the money, but the kids don't have their parents feel that they're entitled because the kids don't have the work ethic, let's say. So they don't
Yeah.
have to do anything to earn the money. So there's two sides of the coin there too, where you
Yeah.
you have all the money, but you just, again, aren't like you said, you're not just understanding what is money. Like,
Yes. And
yeah.
how does it work? And it's like,
Hmm.
so a lot of rich people get hell for saying this, but I've heard many times that, you know, rich people or billionaires saying, well, don't stop drinking your Starbucks and eating avocado toast. And
Hmm.
that's, in my opinion, that's more of a euphemism. They're
Hmm.
not really telling you, hey, don't drink the Starbucks, don't have a good time. They're not saying that. What they're saying is trade a little bit of comfort today
Hmm.
for comfort in the future. And I think that is kind of lost on a lot of people. The struggle is one of the things that I identify in my life that's really helped me out is going through the hard stuff. Financially, when I was a kid, we were poor. We were dirt poor. We didn't have, like, there was summers we didn't have electricity, there was winters we didn't have gas. So like I grew up really poor. The food that we ate, if it didn't come from the government, we either had to catch it, shoot it, or grow it, or we didn't eat it. And that struggle is something that I identify in my life today as one of the reasons why I am as like, I don't consider myself like a successful person. I could, success is relative. I'm happy, so that equals success to me. But I identify those things in my childhood as really kind of a stepping stone and a learning lesson of how the hard stuff, you have to go through the hard stuff now to have comfort later.
Mm.
And I think so that Starbucks and avocado toast is really kind of a euphemism. And the kids that are hearing that are basically saying are hearing, well, you don't want us to have everything that you have,
Mm.
or like, we can't afford this, or we can't, like, none of these people ever really taught their kids like, you can have Starbucks at home, like, you can
And I
literally go
and I
by the
also
bean.
and I also think people see the end result. Like I'm not saying all billionaires struggle,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of self-made. You just don't even cut out billionaires, just millionaires. They're
Yeah.
self-made who, for years, ran a company that wasn't working. So and then kids will see somebody online going, I make 10 million a year making a video. And then they think it's just like poof, that happens. But that, and many people, it goes quick, but other people have done the whole game of of bankruptcy or of just like living basic life until they've grown to a certain level, and then they can go get the Starbucks and avocado toast, and I know that's the euphemism, but then they can enjoy those things that they might not have enjoyed 10 years earlier. So I think it's also like the story too, and where they came from is part of
Yes.
it. And I think you're also hitting on just resiliency, period.
Yes, yes, and that's another one of those things I really wanted to talk to you about was
Yeah, let's do
resiliency,
it.
because that's
Hmm.
that's something in my life that I like preach over and over again. Is I'm so independent because, like, one time I was told no when I was very young, and it really hurt my feelings. And because I saw, like, to give the kind of story, I don't know if I've ever told this one on the podcast, but one time I went over to visit my grandfather, and he needed me to do some things for him. And when I left there, I was like, "Hey, grandpa, can I get $20 for gas?" And he's like, "I don't have $20 to give you for gas." And I was like, "Okay, no problem." And fast forward a half hour to an hour later, he says, "Hey, can you run up to the gas station before you leave and grab me a pack of cigarettes and bring them back?" And I said, "Yeah, I can do that, no problem." And so he handed me a $100 bill to go get him a singular pack of cigarettes. And my thinking at the time was, okay, maybe he's broke. Maybe that $3 or $4 for the pack of cigarettes really all he had, and that $100 bill has to go towards something else. So that was my thinking at the time. But then I watched siblings, and cousins have more attention and different attention than what I got, and so I kind of took offense to it. And I realized at that moment, I was like 17. I realized at that moment that I had to depend on myself. I can't really depend on anybody else. And that's a sad thing, but it's also at the same time, it's incredibly freeing. There's probably a lot of other words to describe it, but it's, for me, that gave me freedom to know that, hey, if I can't fix it myself, I don't need it, right? And the hard things, there's nothing that's worth having comes easy, you know. And so I just took that lesson, and I kind of ran with it, and I am so independent that it's kind of not, it's probably not a good thing as independent that I am. It probably hinders me in a lot of areas, but also I'm incredibly resilient, and I like to teach my kids resiliency. I like to teach my kids that, like, if you can't afford the thing that you want, well, what is the easiest way to get what you want is leverage what you have to get it. And when you're young, what do you have to leverage? Like, you don't have a house, you don't have a car, you don't have assets that you can leverage to get what you want. What you do have is labor, and everybody has labor except for select few that we won't get into that,
Hmm.
but it's, you leverage that labor to get what you want now for comfort later. And I tell my kids, I preach resiliency to my kids. And even my 6-year old, who will be 7 at the end of this month, when we go to the grocery store, like he checks out. Like he runs, like we go to the self checkout and he runs everything across the belt. Or if we don't have a self checkout, you know, uh, he puts everything on the belt and he swipes the card. He's 6. And it's like, those are and he wants to learn these things. So I let him.
Hmm.
I let
Hmm.
him. And doing those things, it's like I've started with this kid really early when he was like 2 years old. He was out
Hmm.
here in the garage and I smoked cigarettes, and he had followed me out here in the garage one time. And I was just sitting around there. He was trying to get like a snow shovel and it had a sharp blade on the end of it. And I didn't really want him to get hurt. So I put it back in the back corner where he couldn't get to it.
Hmm.
Fast forward a couple weeks, and my wife is outside talking to me. And, the kid followed behind her. And mind you, he's 2. So he's kind of, garage is kind of a dangerous place for a 2-year old. But he started trying to get that shovel. And my wife went to stop him. And I said, "Hey, let him be." She's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "If he can get it out of there, he can play with it. That's essentially his reward for getting it out of there. Like he's figured out his own problems. He's solving his own problems." And so
Hmm.
that's kind of the model that I've used over the years. Is like, hey, if that's something that you want, if you can get it, I'm not going to take it from you. Go out and get it. Go
Yeah.
take it. That's you
Yeah.
gotta nobody the world meets nobody halfway. And that's a lesson that I learned in an old movie a long time ago. But the world meets nobody halfway. And if you want it, you got to go get it. And those are lessons that I've taught my kids from an early age, which brings us like back to that word resiliency.
Hmm.
Now you started a program, like a coaching program, and
Hmm.
it's essentially like a way of life, really. Tell me
Hmm.
about that program, because the first
What?
word in that program.
Yeah, it's resiliency. And it's funny you said that because as you were talking, I was thinking problem solving. Like so many parents step in and fix things for their kids, or so many parents say, be resilient, but then they give them everything. So,
Yeah,
so we can't, they need to try to solve the problem, first. But yeah, I named my business the House of Rise because it's all about, rising up and thriving. And a lot of the families and kids that I work with are good kids, are not trouble, are, getting decent grades. It's not necessarily troubled kids per se. Yet the RISE stands for resiliency, identity, self-confidence, emotional regulation. So I think step one is always emotional regulation. Like if you're getting really super angry or if you don't know how to handle your emotions, you have no power, period.
yeah,
So as soon as I can get kids to learn certain strategies and implement that and consistently get a handle on their emotions, not going to fix them. It's just to get a handle on it, take it down a notch. Then that builds their confidence. And then they start to trust themselves and become more resilient because they are like, well, I can do this. I did this last time. So they start believing in themselves, becoming stronger. And then little by little, they step into this new identity. And like you said, the habits, the routines that they create no longer become habits. It just becomes their life. And so that's kind of the model that I created based upon what I know works to get kids to the next level and people to the next level.
that's awesome. And emotional regulation is so important. I have a house of autism here. So
Mm,
my youngest son was diagnosed when he was almost 3, I believe, and with level 2 autism. So level 2 autism is like it's not, he is verbal, he speaks, but and his diagnosis isn't written on his sleeve. You wouldn't immediately notice that he had autism unless you spent like more than 5 minutes with him. And so once he got that diagnosis, we started learning more about autism. And um, later on, like last April, I decided I was going to get tested for autism because I exhibited a lot of the same behaviors as my youngest son. And I went to the doctor and, I got tested, and sure enough, I have autism. then my middle son, he's being tested for autism right now, and he's got a lot of classic signs of autism, but we just didn't know. And so that emotional regulation piece, I think
Mm-hmm.
is really, really important. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad that you start with that first, because without emotional regulation, you can't really do anything. And I get so overwhelmed a lot. Like even
Mm-hmm.
like 10 minutes before I got on here
Mm-hmm.
to talk on this podcast, I was literally screaming because I was
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmed, and I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't screaming at anybody in particular. I was just mad at
Mm-hmm.
myself and just how overwhelmed I wasn't emotionally regulated. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people don't, they don't, maybe they don't understand the term emotional
Mm-hmm.
regulation, or they don't know not just how to emotionally regulate, but what it is
Mm-hmm.
even.
Yeah,
And
and
so
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I know you go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, and especially with kids with autism, ADHD, any kind of quote unquote diagnosis, because it starts with their body. So it's not something they have to, if they're a younger kid, have to deeply understand. It's more of, listening to their nervous system. So, in that moment when you were screaming and overwhelmed, like I can explain to you about managing your mind and, being proactive before it occurs. And, it's the first question I would say to you, and the first question for your children is like, where do you feel it in your body? Like that's the first thing. And that's very, I don't want to, shouldn't say easy, but that's a question that various levels of kids with autism can understand. Like, oh, that was my stomach, or oh, this or that. And then you start working backwards into like, okay, what emotion was it? Name it. And then the hardest part for all kids, regardless of diagnosis or not, is what were they thinking in that moment?
Yes,
Because
yes.
so that you're like, I don't know, it just happened because it's just natural in your body now. You've been doing it for so many years. So the emotional regulation piece, just managing your mind, managing your body, and starting with your body is probably the easiest way to begin to have awareness around it. And that's
Yeah.
that's the that's the first step. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very interesting that you said, no, I forgot where I was going with that. But so I really forgot where I was going with that. That's crazy. That's so this happens a lot in podcasting, and I have ADHD too. So, like, as you're talking, you said something that really kind of piqued my interest there, and then I lost
Mhm.
it. So, um,
Well, if it
anyway,
helps any, I do the same thing when I'm listening, and then I keep a little notebook here because I write down a little thing,
yeah,
because when you're saying something, I'm listening to you and I don't want to interrupt. So I write this down because I want to bring up a point later, right?
yes,
Sometimes that
yes.
works. Sometimes that works for me. Yeah.
So now I remember thinking
Good.
backwards,
Yay.
working backwards from that conclusion. Like I do
Mm-hmm.
that all the time. I see a conclusion and I can work backwards from that conclusion and figure
Mm-hmm.
out. And but I do it both ways, and it's kind of crazy because like we'll start here, right here in this spot right here, but I can imagine or visually see in my mind, in my mind's eye, the conclusion. And that's kind of the same as reverse engineering, but it's very weird how I do it. But I do that a lot, and I thought that was very
Mm-hmm.
interesting that you said that you can work backwards once you identify, okay, this started like this morning, it was in my chest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once I can identify that, I can work backwards from there and kind of figure out how to regulate that feeling and how to make it
Mm-hmm.
different. And that's wild. So
And you know what you're doing? You're basically recognizing patterns. And as soon as you recognize your patterns, you become powerful.
yes,
Because
yes,
until you recognize the pattern, you have no idea what's going on. But as soon as you recognize it, you might not be able to fix it right away. But I know it. I see, oh, here it comes again. Here it comes again. Little by little, it's going to stop coming because you're going to start regulating yourself because
yes.
you're going to use strategies. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
tell me the rest of Rise. Let's get into the rest of Rise and not
Mm-hmm.
just the emotional regulation part of it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I also, so part of the rise model, like how I move kids. I created something called Shift too, but I'll hit on some of those terms as well. But again, starts with emotional regulation. Then, as I said earlier, it's like it's habits and balance routines. So I think it's really important for, you hear all kinds of things. Have a morning routine. What's your, all this. And it could be a little bit like, no, I'm not waking up at 5 in the morning or fine, I'll do this. So I think with habits, a couple things come up for me. One is I would be so regimented when I was a principal and I literally lived my life by the bell for 20 years. Like the bell would ring and, it's just like seriously. So then I realized like your habit doesn't have to be the same every day, but you have to have some sort of habit. So like, for example, if working out is part of your habit, you could do a different workout every day. It doesn't have to
Yes.
be the same workout, but you got to get a half hour in of something, right? So with that, it's good for teens because some teens like the same thing every single day, and that's fine. And other teens, it's all about most teens want choice. They don't want to be told what to do. So it's just like, hey, our family expectation is a half hour workout a day. And you choose what you want to do. I don't care if you want to do jumping jacks, if you want to run down the street, whatever it is, but you get the choice. So I think habits and root and then those become the routine. Like this is just what we do. This is just what we do, and then that becomes your life. So that's one other part of what I work through with kids is, like what does your day look like? Oh, I don't have time to do that. Oh, really? And we block it out, and then there's like a gap of like 4 hours there where you just have so much time to do all the things, right? But
Yes.
we like to say like, we don't have time to do it because you just don't want to do it, right?
Right.
Um,
I do
yeah,
that a lot. A
yeah,
lot. I tell people
yeah.
like I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do that. In reality, what it is like we're a unit here, and
Hmm.
my family is a unit. If they don't have time, I don't have time. And so when I tell people I don't have time, there could be a block of the day where I'm just sitting and doing nothing, but that's
Hmm.
me time. I use
Hmm.
that as me time because
Hmm.
I'm so wrapped up into everybody else's bullshit that I can't focus on myself
Hmm.
sometimes. But like it's really that's incredible that like and this is like an all-encompassing program or like what is your business model exactly?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really, I'm not sure how to answer your question, but I basically, what I really do for teens and families is transformation. So it's transforming your life from where you are right now to the next level of where you want to be. And when we work together through coaching, it's different needs are going to rise as you step into your next identity. Then so we might be working through relationships because you had some problems on social media. That's what you came to me for, and we get through that and over time, and then okay, something pops up with your habits and routines, and we work through that, and then so it's kind of like if you ever heard like growth isn't a straight line, so
Yes.
it's basically that we're growing in different areas in all the areas. So I think uh, we work through state, we work through habits and routines, and then it's really where a lot of people get stuck is integration. So
Yes.
taking meaningful action and really doing the things. Because it's easy for you to sit on a call with me and say like, oh, that's awesome. The kids take notes. They're like, yes, they're responding, everything's good. And then that's Wednesday. Well, what happens on Thursday? What happens on Friday when I'm not there, right? So it's
Exactly.
that integration. Then we really work on the foundation of their values and their beliefs. So it's really forming who they are and their authentic self. So it is this emotional regulation, it is the habits, it's then integrating, but then the quintessential question, who are you? So I think that really grounds them and allows them to have more of their vision and then figure out their purpose. So it's what do I really value and how does this align with the life that I'm living? If I really value my family, but I spend 1 hour a day with them, is that aligned with my vision? And then creating that vision, whether it's them in high school, going off to college and career, whether it's a sixth grader and what's your vision for seventh grade, so a lot of at this time of year, it's a lot of like, well, what is sixth grade you want to leave behind? Like say they weren't focused in school or they got some poor grades or whatever it is. And well, seventh grade me wants to be blah, 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 fill in the blank. And so I think the program I have isn't a set program like step one, two, three, four, five. So when you ask that question, I'm like, "Ugh, I don't know how to answer him. But it's what your child needs when they come to me, and I use all the tools. Yet these are the areas that we're working through, and this is how we're shifting and transforming.
That's awesome. So, if you have you seen a lot of success coming out of this program? Because to be honest with you, I see this as like a successful, like everybody should know kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome because I have kids that and kids are like I have kids that I started with in say ninth grade, and now they're with me in their juniors, and like a ninth grader and an 11th grader, like you can't even recognize her, or
That's awesome.
if I work with a 35-year-old to a 37-year-old, like you don't even tell you can't tell the difference,
Right.
but when you see, like a sixth grade girl came to me and she's having all these drama issues on social media, and then she's going into eighth now and like literally has no time for that. She's so focused on school, so focused on herself, so focused on her studies, or it's boys like not having a girlfriend. They're
Yeah.
juniors, then they go into senior year, and now he's a freshman and he had his first girlfriend in college, and he's reaching out to me all stressed out and it didn't go his way. So the transformation is like you don't recognize them. It
Yes.
starts to so I mean, I can tell stories all day, but yes, it really does work. I have like then the athletes who, they're kicking and screaming, and they're every at bat in baseball, they're throwing their bat, to then, okay, well, maybe they're not happy with the at bat, but that at bat doesn't ruin their entire game anymore.
Oh my
So
goodness. Yes.
you know what I mean? So the transformation can be there's varying levels, but it shows up different ways with different kids. Yeah,
That's
and it really
awesome.
works. Yeah.
That's awesome. And that which reminds me, I wanted to talk to you about grades. Like
Mm,
one thing that like in my house, we don't stress a lot about academic. We don't
hmm
give there's the only academic pressure that's really in my house is number one, you've got to go to school because it's compulsory. If
hmm
you don't go to school, I could go to jail. So that's a problem.
hmm
And you have to maintain C's,
hmm
and that's a rule at my house. I preach expectations. A lot of kids don't know what their expectations are. Their parents don't set that expectation. Their educators don't set that expectation. But to kind of relieve that anxiety about the grades, I'm like, hey, you're not required to bring me A's and B's. I'll be thrilled that you bring me A's and B's. Your only requirement is to you have to get at least a C. Bring me a C because I don't consider D to be passing. Bring me C's, and we stress education over grades. You have to be educated. I don't give a shit what you're learning as long as you're learning. And I really try to stress that education and learning doesn't stop after high school. Like just because you got done in high school doesn't mean you you don't have to learn, but it
hmm
shifts how what you are able to learn and what you have a lot of hours in a day. You can kind of shift that focus to what you want to learn
hmm
as long as you keep growing. Those are my expectations in the house. So like what do you think about that?
Well, I think what it comes down to, what I'm hearing from you and what I believe in, is mastery. So it's the grade means something. Yeah, if you look at the grading scale, if you get a D, you're in the 60s. If you get and then you drop to an F, it's like 50-point difference to a zero.
Yes.
So and I mean, 20 years ago, when I started teaching, there was videos about how the grading scale didn't make sense. And that was an old video at that time. So the traditional way of grading doesn't really make sense, yet that's the world we live in if we go to a typical school. But with that being said, it's you want them to master whatever it is they need to master. If it's algebra, if it's whatever subject they might be learning, you want them to give their best effort. So it's if they're in an art class and they're not an artist, yet they spent a lot of time on that painting, then they get a decent grade because they gave a lot of effort. So I think it's their effort and their mastery. And also, I want to achieve, I want to do well. If they have goals, I want to be on honor roll, great. And if you get a B, that's okay. You didn't make honor roll. So it's how they handle it is more important than anything. And I know when I was a teacher, it would be like, so when I taught seventh grade, like t kids are always turning stuff late. Like they're a mess, right? It's all over the place. And then at the end of the semester, I would give them some time to make up work. And frankly, whatever I graded it wasn't the point, was the point that they actually did the work eventually, because then they understood whatever it was that I needed them to understand.
Exactly.
So, and I think a lot of it is great in school, yet it's a lot of people and families and organizations are shifting towards more hands-on, more inquiry
Yes.
based, more like it's less of the stand and deliver and more an alternative models of something that kids are going to use versus like I don't know, a subject that they're never going to implement
That's
unless they're
right.
in that field of study. So I think there's more to education than just
Well, even
English,
if
math,
they're in that field of study, like in my experience, like I know people that have gone to college and they don't remember shit that they learned. They don't remember anything. I mean,
Mhm.
that's not really learning to me. That's kind of dictating and rote memorization. It's not really learning anything, in my opinion. Now, it's very interesting because recently, Harvard University, their faculty voted to cap the A grade to 20%, meaning they can't go over 20% of A's because so many kids are just having A's handed to them. Like the professors have given up, or they're using ChatGPT or whatever algorithmic learning things that there are out there today. That's what they're using and they're getting away with it. They're not really learning anything. And so Harvard faculty has voted to cap the A's that they hand out to 20%. I think that's wild because what happens to the kids that really deserve those that aren't getting them? Or like, how do you go from having 100% accurate information and getting a B? It's craziness.
Well, and I think
But
it also speaks to the fact of, like, what are we teaching and why are we teaching it? And is this really an engaging lesson? So, I mean, I remember in
yes,
COVID, before COVID, teachers were handing out packets of papers. Many teachers, and I want to be clear, there are many amazing teachers. I was a teacher. This is not a knock on teachers, but there was many teachers handing out packets of paper. And then when we went to COVID and you had to scan it and put it online for kids to do it, they're like, I have to scan all these pages into this system. And
yes.
then I think that made many teachers realize, like, why was I giving this packet anyways? What was the point of it? Now I got to grade this whole thing. And you know what? So it kind of made people think of like, okay, well, is this the way that I want to teach what I need to get across to kids? So I think technology can be good. I think hands-on learning can be good. I think there's a lot of ways that kids can learn, but I think it's the really always remembering what's best for the kids and what's going to get them to the outcome that we're looking for.
Now, see,
And
that's interesting. You said
yeah.
the outcome that's best for the kids.
Hmm.
The education system isn't designed for that. So the American education system, what it was designed for, is to churn out factory workers.
Hmm.
And so a
Hmm.
lot of educators in today's world, I can only speak about today's educators because that's who I have experience with. I didn't really care when I was younger. But with my kids, the educators that I come in contact with assume they're educators. That's what they've been taught. That's so they think that I am up here teaching the class. In reality, everything's regulated. Everything comes from above. It's top
Hmm.
down, very, very top down. And it starts with the federal government, the Federal Department of Education. And so the Federal Department of Education regulates what your school district, like we here in Missouri, we have
Hmm.
districts and school districts, and each
Hmm.
district has a mandate. And the
Right.
mandate is you will teach these certain amount of subjects. So
Hmm.
at that district level, the administration that trickles down to the teachers. The teachers have no control over what they're teaching, just how they're teaching it. In some cases, not even that. And it's a huge problem here in the United States that a lot of educators go to work to be educators, not knowing that they have one hand tied behind their back because they're not allowed to teach what they want to teach or how they want to teach. They have to follow that state or government curriculum, and that's a huge problem.
And it's really what do you want for your kids?
Exactly.
I work with a lot of families that are in private school, in public school, and I also work with a lot of families that are homeschool or online school. So it's what's going to work for your family. If you want your kid to do the traditional route and that's what's right for you and your family, by all means. If you want something different for your kid, then I have families taking sabbaticals and they're doing their sport all day and they're learning online for a couple hours and they're learning what's important, but they're living the life of an athlete until they either become pro or can no longer do that. Or I'm sure you've seen many online, on social media, many programs that it's like 2 hours of AI online. So that the good thing about AI is if you want your kid to learn how to read, it tailors to their lexile level. It tailors to
Yeah.
what they need to, so using AI to meet your kid where they're at is fantastic.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that is great. Sitting your kid on and using AI to do all their homework is not what we're talking about here, right?
I
So
actually think I don't think that's a bad thing as at all. I if you're using AI properly, you're still learning.
yeah, if you're
But
using it
I
as a
think
tool.
yes, yes, and I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about AI, a lot of misunderstanding about what AI actually is, and you cannot
Hmm.
listen to the tech billionaires. You can't listen to the people selling you AI what AI actually is because they're lying to you. Like AI is not going to become a god per se, but AI, if you use it correctly, you're still learning. I use AI all
Yeah.
the time.
I mean, if your kid's learning how to write an essay and they don't know how to write transition sentences and they don't know how to do that, and they go to AI and they try on their own first, put it in there and let AI revise it for them. And then if they don't look at it and they just hand it in, no. But if they look at it and then they go, oh, that's how you write it, they just learn how to write a transition sentence, right?
Right.
So yeah, so it definitely can be used for good. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I have one kid in public school.
Hmm.
And so he's my youngest. He has autism, level 2 autism, and I don't know how to teach him. And that's essentially why
Hmm.
he's still in public school. And I have another kid who is uh, public school through homeschool. And so he doesn't have, like, he has horrible social skills anyway. Like today, for instance, we're having to force him to go out with his friends. Like, I'm like, I will pay, for you guys to go hang out somewhere. You just have to leave. You have to leave the house. You have to interact with your friends. And as a punishment, you have to have fun. And if you don't have fun, it is what it is. But I like for my family here, that public school that public school model was impossible for me to deal with when I was their age. And I see the struggles that they have. And I just, with my older two, I just had to get them through it, because that's all I could
Hmm.
do. That's all I knew how to do. And the older I get, the more experience I've gotten with different kids and different things. I've kind of learned over the years different ways to handle things. And so
Hmm.
I had a brilliant teacher. She was my middle son's first grade teacher who said something to me one time that I don't know if I'll ever forget this, but she said, 90% of education happens outside the classroom. And that's not something I really knew or understood until she told me that. And what we were talking about is I was taking my kids to Disney World in the middle of a school year. And I went to school and I was making sure it was okay with them. And I said, now, like, we're going to be gone, but we'll have computers, we'll have learning, he will be able to do school while we're gone. And I wanted to tell them, like, look, we do plan on doing educational things. Like, we're going to go to museums, we're going to go to do this, we're going to go to do that. And then that's when they told me, like, hey, you are more involved in your kids' education than most of the parents here at this school. And we encourage that. And we don't want to punish you for creating a fun and learning environment for your kids. And then that's when she piped up. She's like, 90% of education doesn't even happen in the classroom. And I was like, mind blown. And then that was in that moment, I was like, man, these little bastards are like little sponges, right? Like
Hmm.
they're really like really smart and like sponges. And if you just feed them information, they'll soak it all in. And so that's what we do. We go to museums. Like that's one of our favorite things. My 6-year old, when he's turning 7 at the end of this month, and we had a difficult decision at the beginning of the year to make. Like we were going to go to Universal Studios in Orlando and do the season pass thing. But the season pass that I wanted to get didn't include the new theme park at Universal Studios. And to get access to
Oh,
that,
snap.
yes. So in order to get access to that, I had to spend a couple thousand more dollars,
Hmm.
or I had to make a choice between a 5-day vacation at Universal, which I felt like wasn't long enough, or
Hmm.
a 14-day long vacation at Universal, which I felt like was too long.
Mm.
So I really wanted the season tickets so we could go down there twice, in one
Hmm.
year, 3 times or whatever. And so we had a decision to make. And I went to talk to my 6-year old, and I said, "Hey, buddy, if by chance for some reason we're not able to make it to Universal Studios this year, what do you want to do for your birthday?" He's like, "I want to go to Chicago." And I was like, well, that's a weird place to want to go to, but all right, like I love Chicago.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
And so, like we have a whole like weekend planned of nothing but going to museums. And
Hmm.
like we all as a family really enjoy those kind of things, and they get more out of that than they do. And we had talked about it earlier in the conversation, hands on, they get more out of that in that 4 or 5 hour trip to, the national or the natural history museum than they would in a semester of natural history class.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
and I
I
think a
find it
lot. Oh,
crazy.
and I think it's great. And I think a lot of families are, waking up and realizing like there's more to it than, like for example, one thing you said was your kids. So at one point, one, you decided to send some to public schools for, all the different reasons. And I know families with the same situations, like, yeah, this just doesn't work for this one. This works for this one. And that's then your kids. And the other thing is like they don't have to stay anywhere forever. For example, I have a girl I work with, she's in elementary, she's a dancer. She's doing great in school right now. She goes to a really good school, everything is great. But mom and I have talked and we know middle school might be rough for her
Yes.
for various reasons, the girl thing, the emotion, all. So she's strongly considering homeschooling for middle school, and then maybe she continues to homeschool. Maybe dance is her thing and she does that. Maybe she goes to a arts high school. You know what I mean? So there doesn't have to be just one answer. You
Yeah.
you can do different things, and you can do all the field trips like you're saying, and then maybe they're doing, you're having like good discussions about all of the art or natural history that you're seeing, and that's their curriculum for that weekend, that day, that year.
Yes.
And so if you feel they're learning what you want them to learn and what they need to learn and how they need to learn it, awesome.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And
Are they prepared for the future?
that's a big one. Being prepared for the future. I know like my 2 older kids, they struggle with knowing the right thing to do sometimes. And they'll call me, and I take these things for granted, right? Because
Hmm.
I have that experience, and I'm like, what the hell are you calling me for? Why don't you just Google it? But my kids trust me, right? So they come to me
Be
because they know.
be happy that they're calling you. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. They come to me because they know dad probably has the answer. And if he doesn't, he can help me find the answer. And
Hmm.
I take that, I take that for granted sometimes. And I get irritated sometimes. Like, why are you calling me? This is so simple. But at the same time, we've talked about it many times over this hour that we've been talking. Is we give them the tools, we don't know they don't know how to use them. Like one of the things that my kids struggled, my oldest son struggled with, was making doctor's appointments.
Mm,
And I took
hmm
for granted that mom and I had always made his doctor's appointments.
hmm
And so when he has teeth issues, he needs to go see the dentist. He doesn't have a clue how any of it works. And
Right, right.
I'm like, weren't you there? Like I had to go to the dentist with you, the orthodontist with you for 2 years for your braces, and we had regular appointments. Didn't you pay any attention to what we were doing there? No. I'm like, there's your problem right there. You didn't pay attention. Well, let's walk you through this, and I'll show you how to do it one more time. But you got to pay attention this time. And
hmm
he's got it down. And we had an issue just yesterday with billing. And an eye doctor. I
hmm
I had to walk him through that, and it was really kind of one of those things that I was learning at the same time he was, and we did it together. And preparing kids for a life without you is
hmm
very, very important. We're all going to die
hmm
someday. It's
hmm
inevitable. There's no magic potion that we can drink to live forever. Not yet. There's no fountain of youth. So eventually we have to face the music. Eventually we will not be here anymore. My job as a parent is to make sure, and I'm kind of choking up thinking about it, but to make
Hmm.
sure that my kids can survive without me, that my kids will
hmm
be okay when I'm
hmm
gone. And that's my job
hmm
as a parent. That's every parent's job out there. They may not
hmm
realize it, they may not look at it that way, but that's our
hmm
job, is to prepare them for a life without us. And the
Yeah.
earlier
Yeah.
you can get a start on that, the better. Well, I started with my youngest at 2 years old with the shovel in the garage. And I think that the more people really kind of just digest that, their own mortality, the fact that they won't be here some point to save their children. And what do you want? Do you want your kid sitting around crying and moping around because they don't have this and they don't have that? Or do you want them to thrive in your absence? Not just
Correct.
survive, but to
Correct.
thrive in your absence.
Correct. And really, like they can't do that unless you help them to build autonomy. So like you
That's right.
said, if you could go back in time, you would have had him make all the doctor's appointments when he was 13 or whatever it was. Okay, well, you didn't, so you taught him later, and that's fair. Yet, how can you have that expectation if he doesn't actually have to do the thing? And I think preparing, it's part of the reason I started the business is because I worked at a really low achieving school and I worked at a really high achieving school. Point was is, it was academically focused. That's what schools are, and we're preparing kids to go to college. So that was working. Yet kids weren't really prepared to go to college. They might have the grades and the GPA, but like they didn't know how to do their laundry or they didn't know how to interact with others. Or I know that the laundry might be a small thing, but it's just to illustrate the point of
It's
like,
not. It's not a small
but
thing.
they don't how are they getting along with roommates? If and that's a relationship skill. So if they had drama and problems with kids in high school, then they go to college, what do you think they're going to have with their roommates?
That's
So
right.
it's the resiliency, the habits, the routines, the transformation, the beliefs, all the things that I'm offering to kids and helping them with is yes, maybe for that sport they're playing that season, or is for that social media concern they're having right now, or whatever it is that parents have come to me for. Yet it's bigger than that because it's the life skills. It's your
That's right.
purpose. It's how are you going to function in this life? Do I want you to reach out to your parents? Absolutely. But I want you to try to solve the problem first and then reach out to them. You know,
That's right.
so yeah, so that's a thing that schools don't teach because that's not the focus of school. School was not made for that purpose. And so how do we teach kids these skills? Well, it's not necessarily happening, with fidelity in schools, so it's got to have to happen somewhere else,
That's
you
right.
know. Mm-hmm.
That's right. You
Mm-hmm.
said laundry. doing their own laundry may not seem like a big deal. I tell you what it is. It is absolutely a big thing because what happens when they're 21 years old and they don't do their own laundry, they're still coming home, or maybe they live at home, and mom and dad are doing their laundry. Um, Without that chore and that expectation that they have to do that, there is no expectation that when they're out on their own that they're going to do it. And they have to know these skills. Everybody has to have clean clothes. Everybody, one thing that really pisses me off is when kids don't know how to, like, parents don't teach their kids how to cook. And
Hmm.
over the years,
Hmm.
we have um I I want to say subsidized, but I know that's not the right word. But we have told kids, like, oh, you just go to this restaurant or you go to the grocery store and you buy all the things, and but they're not teaching them how to make things at home from scratch. And that's one of the things that we teach our kids is how to cook, because like when when we go out to eat, it's a disappointment because their food isn't as good as our food at home, and it's certainly not as healthy for you. And when we go to the store, I taught my kids to read the back of the box, to see all those ingredients. And I'm like, we make the same thing at home with four ingredients. Oh my goodness, that's wild. And so they see those things, and I'm like, the stuff that they're putting in this bread probably isn't good for you. And it's loaded with preservatives and this, that, and the other thing. But those skills,
Hmm.
if there's no expectation to do them while they're at your house under your care, where's the expectation for them to do that when they're on their own? It's not going to be there. You're going to go over to their house, you're going to visit them, the laundry's going to be piled up to the ceiling, the
Hmm.
dishes are going to be unwashed, they're going to be eaten off paper plates.
And
So
then
you kind
also
of have to
speak,
set those skills early.
and it speaks to something in the parent too, because you are probably inadvertently having something going on where your needs are being met by you being able to do for your kid.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of take parents have to look at themselves as what a lot of what I work with a lot of parents is, if you haven't like cut the cord and they're 23, that doesn't mean that you don't love them. It doesn't mean you don't support them and you're not there for them. But you have to start doing that early on. Like give them tasks when they're 8 years old. Then when they're in middle school, have them do things. And then when they're in so it's just not here's the keys to the car and you go wild. It's having them build those skills so that they then can be autonomous, but also you not being kind of in their way because
Yeah.
if you're wanting to
You're
do
essentially
everything
doing
for
them a
them,
disservice.
right? Because you feel like you want to be wanted and needed, and it's filling one of your, needs. Unfortunately, that's kind of selfish, and that's setting them up for some failure. So.
And overcompensating is another problem I run into a
Mhm.
lot. And I overcompensate with the chores thing. The reason why it's such a big deal now is because I overcompensated with my older son. And now, he gets it now, but the middle kid is kind of leaning the same way. He's got a mean laziness streak to him. And it's because when I was a kid, I was made to do a lot of things. Like I was responsible for all the outside chores when I was a kid. My mom kind of used me, my grandparents too. They kind of used me as like a pack mule, if you will. I was like a workhorse for the family. We lived in the middle of the city, but we lived like farmers. But it's one of those things where I overcompensated for that. And I'm never gonna make my kids do that kind of stuff. And now I'm dealing with the consequences because they don't know how. Like my oldest son, I love him to death, but sometimes he needs to learn how the washing machine works. He needs to learn how to do these things. And I'm like, that's my fault. I take responsibility for that. You are the way you are because my mom was the way she was, and I am the way, it's
Right.
that cycle, and we have to step into that cycle, acknowledge that
Hmm.
cycle, and then work on maybe not even stopping that cycle, because like there's a certain
But
amount of love that goes into
well,
it,
I
but
think
just
it's
kind of.
it's, I think the word is interrupting it.
There you
So
go.
I think it's interrupting because it doesn't mean you cut them off and kick them out on the street, but
That's right.
it's you're basically unintentionally increasing, the pressure in their life because you're like really closely monitoring them or problem solving everything, or you're trying to ensure the outcomes because you don't want to see them fail or be overwhelmed or stressed. You're protecting them from the world. And but when they're babies and they're born, that's what your role is, protect them from the
That's
world. But
right.
then as they grow up, it's like you're still protecting. And in you have to sit with yourself and say, okay, I'm going to protect them from X, Y, and Z, but I need to start releasing them from A, B, and C. So
That's
we
right.
still want to protect them, but you know, what at what cost? So I think it's taking a look and seeing like, all right, I'm going to let them make the doctor's appointment, do the laundry, those things. But I'm not going to just let them go, out on their own and take the car because we live in a dangerous city. What, you have to make the call.
Right.
Yet, is this protecting really helping them or is it hurting them?
That's right. That's right.
Hmm.
Well, we've been on here for a little over an hour, and it's been a fantastic conversation. But I think this would be a good place to leave this conversation. And I tell you what, like I'd love to have you back on sometime. I tell a lot of my
Hmm.
guests, like, so I do tell a lot of my guests that, hey, I'd love to have you back on, and they never come back on. So let's not do that. Let's I'd love to have you back on eventually and discuss some of these things. And but where can people find you?
Yeah, so social media is probably the easiest way. Parents tend to be on Facebook and Instagram. Those are two places you can friend me or follow me. I have a Facebook group, I have a YouTube page. So just a lot of like videos and things out there just to provide value to parents. Go take a look, go listen. Hopefully, you learn a few things, pick up a few strategies. And yeah, it's all under my name, Dr. Carla Caturia. And yeah, they can definitely reach out in that way. And if they really thought I was awesome and they're like, let's see what it's like to work together, they can DM me, we can book a call, we can see what works for your family. But yeah, it's all out there on social media.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. And one more thing, I'm going to steal something from one of my favorite podcasts, Trigonometry. What is the one thing that we're not talking about that we should be?
Ooh, good question. Good question. Um, hmm. To pick one might be a little bit tough. Um, I think I don't think you know what I would like to maybe hit on a little bit, and we talked about it a little bit here. Um, but I think we're maybe talking about habits and routines. We're talking about school. We're talking about self-confidence. These are all very, for lack of a better term, easy things to discuss. But we might not be talking about something that sounds heavy, but isn't that heavy, is like generational trauma. Like
Yeah,
so what are you passing on to your teen and looking at yourself and going, ooh, so I feel that a lot of people on social media might, message me and talk to me and all the things and they like posts and all that, but then if something gets deep, we ghost.
that's right.
And or if it's about the parent, not about fix my child. So I think something that might need to be more addressed more is parents and their role. And this is not a judgment. This is just an observation and a way that I would like to support by having that conversation. Yeah.
That's awesome. And that gives me an idea. Let's schedule something. Let's get something on the schedule
Yes.
to talk about generational trauma. I would love to go over that with you. This has been an awesome conversation. Dr. Carla Caturia. It's been fantastic. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed every moment. Appreciate
Hang out
it.
with us for just one more minute. We'll let these guys go. Hey, if you're listening all the way to the end, hit that like button, subscribe. You know what to do. See you next time. Bye.